analysis.
How is the assessment made what child deserves to eat and what child...
Hey folks, welcome back. You just caught a snippet of that exchange, and honestly, it's pretty much what we've grown used to seeing. Representative Omar and others in her circle tend to lean heavily on emotion and dramatic framing rather than sticking to the hard numbers. She's particularly skilled at shaping a narrative that casts her opponent in the worst possible light. In the full clip we're about to watch, you'll see what feels like a textbook example of political theater. The attempt is to portray Mr. Vaort, who's discussing budget concerns, as though he's advocating something extreme, like harming vulnerable families. That's a serious accusation, and it's worth examining whether it actually matches what he says. As you watch, pay close attention. Don't just focus on the claims being made, listen carefully to his direct responses. Ask yourself whether the characterization aligns with his actual words. If you're frustrated with the back-and-forth theatrics in politics and prefer straightforward discussion of the facts, stick around. Let's dive into the full clip and break it down together.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Van, for your testimony today. I wanted to talk a little bit about how your budget proposal is going to have impact on the millions of vulnerable children across this country. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the impact that I see that it will have, because I don't feel like you or this administration or Trump gets it. In America, 1 out of 5 children struggle with hunger. And for many of these children, the free lunch and breakfast that they get in school is often the only meal they get to have. Yet the budget that you're proposing, and this administration and Trump is proposing, makes a $1.7 billion cut from school meals over the next 10 years. A cut that largely would result in more than 29,000 children losing access to free school meals program in my home state of Minnesota alone. What this budget does is quite literally take food out of the mouths of children. How can these kids be expected to be present and fully present in classes, to learn in the same space as other kids? How can we expect them to reach their full potential? And how can we expect them to be able to be on the same footing as other kids around the world? I often say that budgets are a value statement, as you have many times in this committee. And you said that we are committed to having promises kept. What does this budget and your proposal in cutting the child nutrition programs say about the promises that we want to keep to children and where our values really are?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. We don't think that our budget cuts the programs that you refer to. Specifically, we think that it's important that high-income schools that are currently grouped together right now to receive benefits because they're grouped with low-income schools, that's unfair for the programs themselves. Similarly, some of the reductions that you've talked about are with regard to one-time rescissions that are not needed to be able to cover all of the children that we currently project. And we know Congress does the same analysis.
How is the assessment made what child deserves to eat and what child doesn't? My understanding is that we should care about every single child arriving in that school, having the resources that they need to be able to get educated and be fully present. We have parents who might fall off the threshold of whatever that income is, who might not be able to pack a lunch or a breakfast or milk or a cookie or an apple for their kids. Should those kids not be able to have meals in the school so that they can be fully present in that classroom? Is that what this administration values?
We believe it's important that communities that are otherwise ineligible to receive these types of benefits not receive these benefits, and that only the communities that are eligible receive them.
But how is the judgment of what the value of the benefits is made? We are talking about children in our classrooms. We are talking about America's most vulnerable. Earlier, you talked about the harvest box. You said if they are not home, that they should pay a price.
No, I didn't say
Just that was the example you used, that if you're not home, then you pay a fee.
No.
So what penalty would you think should we propose for people who might not be home to receive juice or cereal box or a canned meat?
I specifically was not referring to suggesting that they should pay a penalty. The point I was making, Congresswoman, is that we don't think that it matters where you are on the income scale to be able to determine a certain level of responsibility to receive in the mail that which you are expecting to receive in the mail. We think that human beings...
All right, that was a lot to unpack. Let's take it step by step. Right away, Representative Ilhan Omar opened with a powerful line that the proposed budget would take food out of the mouths of children. It's a striking way to frame the issue. Instead of starting with technical details, she centers the moral stakes of the policy. That immediately shifts the tone from a numbers discussion to a values debate. She also says she doesn't believe the administration understands what families are facing. Supporters of the budget would likely argue the opposite, that they do understand, but believe reforms are necessary to ensure programs are targeted properly and managed responsibly. When the $1.7 billion figure comes up, Mr. Vail pushes back, saying the proposal doesn't cut the core program itself. His argument focuses on eligibility rules, specifically, whether higher-income schools are being grouped in ways that allow them access to benefits intended for low-income communities. From that perspective, the change isn't about reducing support for vulnerable children, but tightening qualifications so funds are directed where they are most needed. Representative Omar, however, doesn't engage primarily on the technical eligibility question. Instead, she asks how the government decides what child deserves to eat. That question reframes the debate again, from administrative criteria to the moral implications of restricting access. To critics of the proposal, changes in eligibility can still translate into real-world impacts for families, regardless of how they are described in budget language. There's also the exchange about the harvest box proposal. She references a statement suggesting recipients might face consequences if they fail to receive or pick up a package. He denies that characterization and clarifies he was referring to personal responsibility in receiving deliveries. That moment becomes a dispute over interpretation, whether his earlier comments implied penalties or not. Throughout the exchange, the tone contrast is noticeable. Mr. Vail remains composed and emphasizes fiscal structure, eligibility definitions, and program mechanics. Representative Omar maintains a confrontational style focused on the human consequences of policy decisions. Finally, the defense spending comparison brings in a broader ideological divide, what federal priorities should be, and how limited resources ought to be allocated. One side frames the issue as fiscal discipline and structural reform, the other frames it as moral responsibility and social investment. In the end, the exchange reflects a larger tension in Washington, whether budget debates are primarily about numbers and systems, or about values and lived consequences. Reasonable people can disagree about the policy, but the framing makes a significant difference in how the public understands it. What stood out most to you, the policy details, or the tone of the exchange?